Sometimes one choice is all it takes to change everything. In a moment of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, someone made a decision that set off a chain reaction no one could have predicted. Today, you're about to witness a story that isn't just about bravery. It's about resilience, kindness, and how even the smallest actions can create the biggest waves. Get ready for an emotional journey filled with unexpected twists, powerful lessons, and a conclusion that will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. If you think you've seen it all, wait until the final moment. Buckle up. This story is about to begin. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Alex Carter stepped out of his front door, his backpack slung over one shoulder and his eyes scanning the quiet suburban street. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly fallen leaves, but Alex's mind was elsewhere. For most kids his age, middle school was a whirlwind of friendships, tests, and soccer practice. But for Alex, every day felt like walking a tightrope, not because of anything he had done, but because of the weight he carried silently, a weight no one else could see. Alex wasn't the loudest kid in class. He wasn't the fastest runner or the wittiest joker, but he was observant, thoughtful, and carried a quiet strength that few noticed. His parents, Claire and Robert Carter, always told him he had an old soul, the kind that understood things most adults struggled with. Yet despite his composed exterior, Alex felt the sharp edges of loneliness pressing against him every time he stepped into the school hallway. Being different had a cost, and Alex was reminded of it every single day. At home, things felt easier. His little sister Lily adored him. His parents supported him without hesitation. But school was another battlefield entirely. That Tuesday morning, however, something felt different. Maybe it was the way the wind whispered through the trees, or how the light hit the pavement just right. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something important was going to happen, something that would change everything. As he walked through the double doors of Jefferson Middle School, his footsteps echoing faintly against the tiled floor, Alex took a deep breath. He didn't know it yet, but that day would test everything he thought he knew about courage, kindness, and the power of a single choice. The hallways of Jefferson Middle School buzzed with the chaotic symphony of middle school life, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, and fragments of conversations echoing off the linoleum floor. Alex kept his head down, weaving carefully through the crowd. Today was supposed to be like any other day, blend in, keep quiet, and avoid drawing attention. But life, as Alex was about to learn, rarely sticks to the script. It happened between second and third period, near the water fountains by the science wing. Alex had stopped for a drink when he heard it, a voice, sharp and cutting, slicing through the chatter. "What's wrong with you, Mason? Can't you do anything right?" The voice belonged to Tyler Grant, one of the loudest kids in 8th grade, known for his bravado and sharp tongue. Standing in front of Tyler was Mason, a smaller boy with glasses slipping down his nose and a crushed look on his face. Alex froze. He'd seen scenes like this play out before. Kids like Mason, quiet and unassuming, often became easy targets. The hallway seemed to shrink around Alex as he watched Mason's shoulders curl inward, his eyes darting nervously toward the ground. Tyler's voice rose again, a cruel laugh bubbling up. Students walked by, some glancing over before quickly looking away. Nobody wanted to get involved. Alex felt his stomach tighten. He could feel the weight of the choice pressing against him: walk away and stay invisible, or step forward and become part of the scene. His heart pounded in his chest as he imagined the fallout. If he intervened, Tyler would surely turn his attention on him. But if he walked away, if he let Mason stand there alone, could he live with that? Seconds felt like hours. Alex clenched his fists, his breath catching in his throat, and then, almost without thinking, he took a step forward. "Hey, Tyler, leave him alone." The words came out steadier than he expected, but the hallway went silent. Tyler turned slowly, his grin fading into something sharper, colder. Mason's eyes widened, flicking nervously between Alex and Tyler. The choice was made. Alex had stepped into the spotlight, and there was no turning back now. For a moment, everything was still. The crowded hallway, the sound of lockers slamming, the chatter. It all faded into silence as Alex stood face to face with Tyler. The older boy tilted his head slightly, his grin returning, now sharper and more menacing. "What did you just say, Carter?" Tyler's voice was low, almost a growl. Alex felt his palms start to sweat, but he stood his ground. "I said leave him alone." Mason, still frozen in place, looked at Alex as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Around them, a few students had stopped walking, their eyes glued to the unfolding scene. Some whispered to each other. Others quickly moved on, unwilling to become part of whatever was about to happen. Tyler took a step closer, closing the distance between them. Alex could feel the stares pressing down on him, the weight of 100 unspoken words from the onlookers. But before Tyler could say or do anything, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Tyler." Mrs. Ramirez, one of the science teachers, appeared from around the corner, her expression stern and commanding. Tyler froze, his bravado faltering for just a moment. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. The crowd began to disperse, the hum of school life slowly returning. Mason let out a shaky breath, adjusting his glasses. "Thanks, Alex," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex gave him a small nod, feeling his chest loosen slightly. But the moment of relief was brief. Throughout the rest of the day, Alex felt the weight of what had happened. Whispers followed him in the hallways. Some students gave him subtle nods of respect, while others avoided his gaze entirely. He noticed Tyler and his group watching him during lunch, their stares cold and calculating. By the time the final bell rang, Alex felt drained. Standing up to Tyler had been the right thing to do, he was sure of that. But now the consequences of that choice felt heavier than he'd expected. As he walked home that afternoon, backpack slung over one shoulder and leaves crunching under his sneakers, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The next morning, Alex felt the weight of yesterday's events still pressing heavily on his chest. The walk to Jefferson Middle School felt longer, the crisp autumn air sharper against his face. Each step echoed with the memory of Tyler's stare, Mason's nervous gratitude, and Mrs. Ramirez's sharp voice cutting through the silence. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for him, something he couldn't avoid. As Alex stepped into the school building, the air felt different. The usual noise of slamming lockers and chatter was there, but beneath it was an undercurrent of something else, anticipation, maybe even dread. He kept his head down, walking quickly toward his locker. But Tyler was already there, leaning casually against the row of lockers, flanked by two of his friends. "Morning, Carter," Tyler said, his voice low and sharp, cutting through the noise. "Like a blade. You think you're some kind of hero now, huh?" Alex froze, gripping the strap of his backpack tighter. "Just leave me alone, Tyler." But Tyler wasn't letting go. He stepped forward, his grin widening into something predatory. The hallway seemed to narrow and the air felt thick. Around them, students began to notice, their conversations fading as they stopped to watch. Alex's chest tightened as Tyler's friends closed in, creating a semicircle around him. "You had your little moment yesterday, Carter, but heroes don't last long around here." Before Alex could react, Tyler shoved him hard. Alex stumbled backward, his shoulder colliding with the cold metal lockers. The loud clang echoed through the hallway, followed by a collective gasp from the growing crowd. Alex steadied himself, his palms flat against the locker doors, his breath sharp and uneven. Everything inside him screamed to walk away, to let it go, to avoid making things worse. But somewhere deep in his chest, something else stirred, something steady, something unbreakable. "You think this makes you strong, Tyler?" Alex's voice was steady despite the sting in his shoulder. "Pushing people around, hurting them. You're not strong, you're scared." For a moment, Tyler froze. The grin faltered, and something flickered. In his eyes, something vulnerable, something real. The hallway was silent now, everyone watching, holding their breath. Even Tyler's friends shifted uncomfortably, their confidence starting to crack. Before Tyler could respond, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "What's going on here?" It was Principal Harris. His deep voice carried authority, and his eyes swept over the scene. Tyler stepped back immediately, his bravado crumbling under the principal's gaze. "Nothing," he muttered before turning and walking away, his friends trailing behind him. Principal Harris looked at Alex, his tone softer now. "Are you all right, Alex?" Alex nodded, though his chest still felt tight. As the crowd began to disperse, Mason appeared beside him, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't back down," he said. "You stood up to him?" Alex managed a faint smile, his hands still trembling slightly. The confrontation was over, but Alex knew something had shifted. Not just with Tyler, not just in the hallway, but deep inside himself. He wasn't the same kid who had walked into Jefferson Middle School that morning. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Alex moved through his classes, but his mind kept replaying the confrontation in the hallway, the push against the lockers, the silence that followed his words, the look in Tyler's eyes, the flicker of something human beneath all the bravado. But more than anything, it was Mason's quiet voice echoing in his head. "You didn't back down." By lunchtime, things felt different. Alex walked into the cafeteria with his tray, and for the first time, he noticed the way people looked at him. Not with pity, not with indifference, but with something else. Respect. Mason waved him over, and Alex sat down at the table where usually Mason ate alone. "I think you started something, Alex," Mason said quietly, glancing around. "People are noticing." Alex looked around, and he saw it too. The quiet kid in the corner who used to eat with his head down was sitting with someone now. A girl who used to walk hurriedly past Tyler's group now walked with her head held high. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was happening. And Alex realized something. Courage was contagious. That afternoon, as Alex walked home, the weight on his chest felt lighter. The orange autumn leaves crunched under his sneakers, and the sky stretched endlessly above him. When he reached his house, his dad was sitting on the porch steps, a mug of coffee in hand. Without a word, Alex sat down beside him. "You know, Dad," Alex said after a long silence, "I don't think Tyler's as strong as he pretends to be." Robert took a sip of his coffee and nodded thoughtfully. "You might be right, son. Sometimes the loudest people are the ones carrying the heaviest fears." "Do you think he'll stop?" Alex asked, his voice quieter now. Robert looked at him and smiled faintly. "I don't know, Alex, but I do know this. Every time you stand up, every time you choose courage over fear, you remind people, yourself included, that they can do the same." The next morning, Alex walked into Jefferson Middle School with his head a little higher. The air felt different. Tyler was there, leaning against his usual locker, but something had changed. Their eyes met briefly, and for the first time, Tyler looked away first. No smirk, no words, just silence. As Alex walked past him, Mason fell into step beside him. "You ready for today?" Mason asked with a small smile. Alex nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." In the weeks that followed, the change Alex had noticed began to grow. Mason wasn't eating lunch alone anymore. The quiet kids were speaking up. Tyler's group started to shrink, their grip on the school beginning to fade. It wasn't a perfect change, nothing ever is, but it was real. And it started with one moment, one choice, one step forward. Sometimes being brave isn't about grand gestures or heroic speeches. Sometimes it's about standing your ground when every part of you wants to run away. Alex had done that, and because he did, everything was different. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet whisper, a steady breath before stepping forward when everything inside you says to turn back. Alex Carter didn't see himself as a hero. He didn't think he had done something extraordinary. But courage, true courage, often feels that way, ordinary, unremarkable, until you realize its ripple effect. What happened in that hallway wasn't just about Alex standing up to Tyler. It was about Mason finding his voice. It was about other kids realizing they didn't have to stay silent anymore. And maybe, just maybe, it was about Tyler too, facing a reflection of himself he wasn't ready to see. We all face these moments in life, crossroads where we have to choose between stepping forward or fading into the background. These moments don't come with warning signs or applause. They're quiet, sometimes terrifying, and they ask for something simple yet profound: a choice. Alex made his choice. He stepped forward, even when it was hard, even when he was scared. And because he did, others found the courage to do the same. The truth is, bravery isn't always about grand acts. Sometimes it's about the small things. Speaking up when someone's being mistreated, standing by someone who feels alone, or simply refusing to let fear have the final word.